there, everyone. If you're watching this video, then you are part of the TTOR Army, an army that is building itself up one subscriber at a time. As you can see from the title and thumbnail of today's video, today we're going to be talking about how the lack of economically attractive men is what's leading to the decline of marriage rates in the Western world. But before we get into the numbers, the data, the graphs, I want you to know something. The numbers, the data, and the graphs that present all this information, it is not what is convincing men, both Christian men and secular non-believing men, to jump into red pill MGTOW philosophy. The data, the numbers, and the figures is just a reflection of their personal experiences. It helps these men to realize that what they're going through is not unique and it is not some abnormal situation. It is unfortunately a very common problem for millions of men in the Western world. In other words, it's their experiences with women that are pushing them into red pill MGTOW philosophy. It's not red pill MGTOW philosophy pulling them in with stats, numbers, and figures. The stats, numbers, and figures are just a reflection of men's personal experiences in the Western world especially. Now, that being said, let's go into all the information that shows you that the lack of economically attractive men is what is being blamed for the decline of marriage rates in the Western world. First up, I want to show you a graph I literally just came across last night at the time of this recording. It's literally titled, "Number of Unmarried Men is Surging." This is from the Current Population Survey, ASEC 2000 through 2025 via IPUMS. It's a family studies study, and it looks at the U.S. men ages 20 to 39 by marital status. So in the year 2000, 20.7 million men were unmarried according to their registered marital status. 18.1 million men were married according to their registered marital status. Now, this obviously shows that while there were slightly more unmarried men than married men in the 20 to 39 demographic in the United States of America in the year 2000, that's a generally even split. It's almost 50-50, which is what you would expect one way or the other. However, you flash forward to 2025 and things have taken a dramatic turn in the last 25 years. The number of married men has gone from 18.1 down to 15.4 million. This is men whose marital status is registered as married in the 20 to 39 demographic in the United States of America. Meanwhile, the number of men in the United States ages 20 to 39 who are unmarried according to their registered marital status, that number flew up to 30.4 million. Now, when you're looking at why the number of married men dipped from 18.1 million to 15.4 million, you can attribute that to divorce, and you can attribute that to women who died, and so the men are left as widows because their wives died for one reason or another. That can account for a lot of that stuff. But even if you factor that into the increase in unmarried men, that still only accounts for about 2.7 million people. That leaves us well over 7 million people in the unmarried men category that are not the result of divorce or their spouse dying. So how do we account for the other 7 million unmarried men? Well, it gets even worse than that, because not too long ago, I came across this report from the United States Census Bureau official website. It even says in the upper left-hand corner at the top, an official website of the United States government. This article from December 2025 titled "Census Bureau Releases New Estimates on America's Families and Living Arrangements." When you go down to the section that says marriage, this is what the report says. The estimated median age at first marriage increased to 30.8 for men and 28.4 for women, up from ranges 23.5 and 21.1 respectively in 1975. That's right, ladies and gentlemen. You heard that correctly. According to the United States government, in December of 2025, according to their own Census Bureau, the average age of men entering their first marriage in 2025 is 31 years old. Back in 1975, that average age for men entering their first marriage was 23 years old. That's almost a whole decade older. What is going on? Why are men so much older when they get married for the first time compared to 50 years ago? Well, there's a couple of things behind that. One, the economy changed dramatically. Price of everything, including price of living, went way up, and so it's a lot harder to buy a home because back in the 70s, you still had factory jobs that young men could get into, and that factory job combined with the far underflated economy, the economy that wasn't nearly as inflated as now, that economy plus their factory jobs could provide them enough resources financially to buy a home and provide for a family. And so getting married in your early 20s was actually really stinking easy compared to today. However, today, the price of everything has gone up, including and especially the price of living and the prices of buying homes. And because we don't have a modern equivalent of those factory jobs for young men to get that would allow them to buy a home and provide for a family, it takes men a lot longer to build up their financial resources to the point where they're considered economically attractive as marriage and dating partners. It takes men until their 30s in general, sometimes closer to 40, to reach the point where they have their own house, they have their own car, they have their own insurance, and they have a good enough paying job to finance all of that. This is why, back in Business Insider in 2018, Jennifer Lopez said men are useless before 33, and she's actually not wrong. In a new episode of Tinder's Swipe Sessions video series, Lopez helped Brooke, a 29-year-old country singer, weed through her possible Tinder suitors. Brooke said she wanted a type of guy who could chop wood, so while swiping through some of Brooke's options, in which she nixed a guy for having a bio that read, "If you store ketchup in the refrigerator, it's not going to work out," Lopez doled out some sage dating advice. Guys until they're 33 are really useless, Lopez said. According to Jane Greer, a New York-based relationship expert and the author of What About Me? Stop Selfishness from Ruining Your Relationship, Lopez's advice is actually pretty solid, especially if you're specifically looking for commitment. It can take men into their early 30s to establish their professional career and feel a sense of financial stability, which helps them feel more secure in life, Greer told Insider. As a result, this can give them the maturity that comes with accomplishment, experience, and success. This doesn't mean guys in their 20s should automatically be off limits, but it does offer an explanation as to why some men seem to make a sudden shift in their ability to commit around the time they turn 30. So as we can see from this Business Insider article, Jennifer Lopez said that guys are useless until they're 33, and then Business Insider brings in a so-called relationship expert named Jane Greer, who says that the reason that Lopez's advice, what she said, is true, is because it takes men into their early 30s to establish their professional career, which then establishes their financial stability. And even though the article goes on to say that this doesn't mean that guys in their 20s should automatically be off limits, this basically does put guys in their 20s to be off limits because guys in their 20s, generally speaking, don't have the financial resources that women are looking for in a marriage partner. And when I say women, I mean women as a collective in the modern world. But what about actual studies? Because any old so-called relationship expert and any old so-called famous person can say anything. Well, CBS News put out an article in 2019 titled, "Study: Fewer Economically Attractive Men to Blame for Marriage Decline." The article reads, A shortage of economically attractive men may be one reason for a steady decline in marriages in the United States, according to new research. Researchers at Cornell University analyzed opposite-sex couples comparing the incomes of potential male spouses with those of men who married women of a similar demographic. According to the study published in the Journal of Marriage and Family, estimated potential dream husbands have an average income that is about 58% higher than the actual unmarried men that are currently available to unmarried women. They were also 30% more likely to be employed and 19% more likely to have a college degree. Most American women hope to marry, but current shortages of marriageable men with a stable job and good income make this increasingly difficult, especially in the current gig economy of unstable, low-paying service jobs, said lead author Daniel T. Lichter, PhD of Cornell University. So yes, you heard that correctly. According to a Cornell University study in 2019, the lack of economically attractive men is one of the main contributors to the declining marriage rates in the United States of America. And I would argue the Western world. And how do they define economically attractive man? Well, they say most American women hope to marry, but current shortages of marriageable men, and that defines marriageable men as men with a stable job and good income. Well, what's good income? That means that your job pays well enough so that you can have your own place, have your own car, have your own insurance, and you can provide for a spouse. That's what good income means. So literally, if you don't have a job that pays good enough to do all that stuff, then you are not a marriageable man, according to the author of this study. Let's continue, though. Racial and ethnic minorities, especially black women, face even more of a shortage of potential marital partners, according to the study's findings. Additionally, women on both the low and high end of the socioeconomic spectrum face a harder time finding an economically compatible mate. The marriage rate in the U.S. is the lowest it's been in at least 150 years, PBS recently reported. Marriage is still based on love, but it also is fundamentally an economic transaction, said Lichter. Many young men today have little to bring to the marriage bargain, especially as young women's education levels on average now exceed their male suitors. So we just read an article talking about how a lack of economically attractive men is a contributing factor to the declining marriage rates in the United States of America. And it defines economically attractive men as men who have good and stable jobs and whose education level is on par with or better than the woman's. If you don't have that job that pays good enough to buy a home and provide for a spouse, and if your education level is less than a young woman's, you, young man, are not marriage material, according to this article. Then we got this article from The Cut, which is a New York publication, titled, "The Good Man Shortage Has Gotten Exponentially Worse. The Crisis is Both a Boon and a Challenge for High-End Matchmakers Helping Women Find Love." And you have to scroll down a bit in the story to see what they mean by lack of good men. It's in this paragraph that we read, "Desperate times call for desperate measures. Historically, matchmaking was a man's game. The stereotype was this. Rich men would turn to matchmakers to connect them with beautiful, often younger women who could hold a conversation, and matchmakers would source and vet these women. But in the half-decade since heteropessimism entered the lexicon and women started openly decrying the shabby state of men, less educated, less likely to own a home, more conservative, the field of matchmaking has changed. Almost all of our inbound calls are women at the moment," says Amy Van Doren, founder of Modern Love Club, a high-end matchmaking service whose services begin at $100,000. So, according to this article, men are in a shabby state, and they define shabby state as these men are less educated than women, they are less likely to own a home than the woman is, and men as a collective are more conservative. And in one of my previous videos, we actually looked at that, how when you look at the age 18 to 29 demographic in the United States of America, what you discover is that in the early 2000s, both men and women were conservative leaning in that age demographic as a collective. But by 2021, women swung far left. They went super woke left in the 18 to 29 demographic, but men were still conservative leaning as a collective in the age 18 to 29 demographic. So we've looked at two articles that talk about men who are not economically attractive, one implicitly so that we just looked at, and the one before, which was explicitly so. And basically, what it says is that men who are not economically attractive, they don't have a good enough paying job to finance a home, their own ride, and insurance, and provide for a spouse. It means that their education level is not as high as a woman's, generally speaking. It means that they probably don't own a home. And in a lot of cases, their crime is that they're just too conservative. They just aren't far left enough. They aren't woke enough for women to consider them as marriage partners or even potential dating partners. Now, there are a lot of people out there who don't believe that a lack of economically attractive man is a reason why marriage rates are plummeting and why keeping people together in good, stable marriages is more difficult than ever. But as we can see from looking at just some articles on the internet from the United States government and official studies, we can see that men on average are not getting married for the first time until their 30s. And the reason why this is so is because these men are not economically attractive enough to women until they hit their 30s, which is where they finally hit the point where they make enough money to have a home and have a car and their own insurance, and they're able to finance everything with their job and not have to worry about being homeless or having to find another place to live. What's funny is that modern feminists like to make fun of men when we point this stuff out. This lady named Sophia said on Twitter recently, "Men say they want marriage, but then spend their best reproductive years chasing careers, partying, and sleeping around. Then at 35, they suddenly expect a good woman to..." This is satire. Women hear some version of this every day. I changed women to men, and hopefully you can hear how idiotic these alpha men posts humans are. Overlook all that baggage. Actions have consequences, gentlemen. To which I responded in her comment section, and as my own tweet, more like, quote, "Men want marriage and kids, but they spend their best reproductive years being invisible to women while they struggle until their 30s to build themselves up to the point where a woman finally considers them to be worth dating or marrying." And as we can see in her comments section, I'm not the only one who's saying or thinking this. A nice guy named Andrew Height said, "Yes, because they are trying to build up the resources they are told by your side to have before they are even considered. This is why your side of the species is corrupted by greed and it is twisting things." Matthew Lister pointed out in response, "Vast majority of men do not sleep around and cannot even if they wanted. Also, it is a fact that people of higher body counts are way more likely to cheat and get divorced. You'd be mad to get married to someone like that." A man named Too Based said, "Wrong. You've mixed up men and women. Women have value when they turn 18. Men don't. Men are literally invisible to everybody at this point. Women spend their 20s as whores until they reach 28, then panic. You've got the most average female brainwashed mentality." Patterns Never Lie said in response, "False equivalence. Women have to marry young because fertility drops through the 30s and eventually ends. Men age too, but their runway is much longer. Then there's mate selection. Women disproportionately want status, income, and competence. The men they want often spend their 20s and 30s building exactly that. So a man going from 25 to 35 can become more desirable. A woman doing the same burns through the reproductive window she can't rebuild. You idiot." Now, I agree with most of this, but I don't completely agree. It is true that women in general, as a collective, disproportionately want status, income, and competence in their men. But it's been my personal experience that those young women are not looking at guys in their 30s for that. At least not average looking guys in their 30s for that. But he is right, though. Patterns never lie. Is right that a man going from 25 to 35 can become more desirable, especially as he gets his own house and his own car and his own insurance, and he's got a good enough paying job to finance all that stuff, and not have to worry about being homeless. That is completely true. But the women he usually attracts, if he's an average man anyway, are women who are about the same age or 5 to 20 years older. A random Twitter user named Mike L73890095 said in response, "Interesting experiment. I chased career, had no women interested till I was close to 35. Only when I really stopped looking did the situation change." Well, ladies and gentlemen, I think I'm done here. I think I've made the point at this point in the video that there is a shortage of economically attractive men, according to legacy media outlets and studies that were done by Cornell University. And we can obviously see that this is contributing to what we see in the real world, which is why men entering their first marriages in 2025 on average are 31 years old compared to 1975 when they were on average 23 years old. With that being said, before we get out of here, if you're interested in helping me preserve freedom of speech on the internet, I would encourage you to join me on Creation Social, which is a Twitter alternative that I started back in 2021, actually, back when it was a Facebook alternative. But then last year, I rebranded the site and turned it into a Twitter alternative. And currently, we're sitting at 126 members. So if you'd like to join the site and help contribute to the discussion on all topics freely, be sure to join Creation Social. Start posting stuff to the website, both in the general activity feed, or you can post in all these specialized topic feeds on the sidebar. And of course, follow me on Creation Social. I can always use more than the 7 followers that I have. With that being said, I will see you in the next video. Ta-ta for now.